So a couple weeks ago, well, let's roll the clock all the way back to the Metro Council meeting where the chief of police, Murphy Paul, just went off. I mean, he got highly emotional about a number of different things, not the least of which was he was talking about people coming after his kids. And look, I don't think there's a dad out there that doesn't understand if someone comes at your kids, you're going to lose your biscuits a little bit. And so Chief came on the show, I guess it was a couple mornings later, to kind of give the recap and expand on what was said at the meeting. And one of the things he said here, he was talking about how there's people that are out there against him and have been against him. And he mentioned something to the effect of posting up in parking lots and potentially following him home. Well, I had no idea who he was talking about. He did not give names at the time. But apparently, one of the guys he was talking about is sitting right next to me right now. John Dauthier, welcome to Talk 107.3. How are you, man?
I'm well. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
No, glad to have you on here. Glad to have you telling this side of the story because it was something that left a lot of people with questions. And you'd hit me up yesterday. It's like, this needs to get out there. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. So, former sergeant with BRPD. Before we get into the stuff with Chief, let's just tell a little bit about your story because you were in the news a little bit last year as well with you leaving BRPD. So, walk us through a little bit about your history with the police department.
Sure. Yeah. So I started with the department back in 2001. Of course, I went into uniform patrol, and a few years later, I think about 4 years later, I went into the homicide division. I spent 11 years there, the last 4 years as the department's only cold case detective.
Okay.
From there, excuse me, in the middle of 2016, I went into the administration, specifically into internal affairs. I spent the next 2.5 years there before I asked to leave to return to uniform patrol, and that's where I finished my career.
Why? Why did you want to move from IA back to uniform patrol?
That's a great question because let me tell you, nobody asked to leave administration. That's an exceedingly rare request,
yes.
Right?
Well, when the chief first started, it was a big piece of it was a center of a lot of turmoil, asking people to get back on patrol.
Right.
Generally, there were people that stepped down just because of that.
Right. Generally, once you're in administration, that's a career progression.
Sure.
Generally, people don't ask to leave; they're told to leave. I know of only 3 people, including myself, in my entire career who've asked to leave. I asked to leave. You asked why. Very simply, it became very evident to me that there was, and I've used this term a number of times, a less than fair doctrine of enforcing policies of the police department. I saw it happening. I was disgusted by it. I couldn't change it. So I had a decision, be part of it or not. And I asked to not be.
Now, so the chief has addressed this from are you talking about from a racial perspective?
Because it appeared to be very much along racial lines to me. Correct.
So he said on this show, like, go look at the numbers. He'll point back to the numbers, saying that the disparity is just not there. But you're saying that's not what you experienced firsthand.
Right, and I would love to have an opportunity to talk to him about that because I can make the numbers say whatever I want them to say, right? So when he shows you numbers that says, look here, it's pretty even or it's proportional to the racial makeup of the department, then I say, what about all those cases that you didn't investigate, that never made it, that never got an internal affairs file number that made it to your report? What about those accountability forms? And I'm using some jargon here, but I can tell you that there is a way to make those numbers say what you want. Those numbers don't show the 10, 15, 20, whatever the number is of officers that you got legitimate complaints on that you never opened a case on. Those numbers don't show that.
Right. Yeah, you can't know what's not there.
Exactly. It's that simple.
John Dauthier, former Baton Rouge Police Sergeant, is our guest this morning. Telling his end of a story that has brought his name into the headlines more often than you'd like, I would imagine.
You would imagine correctly.
So it wasn't just the external stuff, though. There were things involving you as well, particular accusations that led to your departure too, right?
No.
No?
No. I had not been accused of any wrongdoing at that point. I just didn't like what I was seeing, and I wasn't going to be a part of it, so I asked to leave.
Okay. So when you did leave, walk us through what put you over the limit there, because there's got to be a straw that breaks the camel's back.
Yeah. Let me give you an example, and this was one of the straws. There was a complaint that came in. It was one officer complaining on her supervisor.
Okay.
The complaining officer is a personal friend of then Sergeant Daniels, who had been brought in basically off the street as a way to say it, as the Internal Affairs Commander. And they're personal friends. They're in social organizations together. Well, she wrote a complaint on her supervisor. And the complaint was related to the use of body camera during some in-office business. And she complained about that. She said, I think he's violating policy. I don't like that he's using the cameras in these situations. And so the complaint was assigned to a detective in Internal Affairs who at that time was relatively new, but very competent. And he came to me and said, I want to show you this because if what she's saying is true, he actually is in compliance with policy. I said, you know what? That happens all the time. We get complaints on officers, even from other officers, and the complaint upon behavior is actually consistent with policy. I said, so what we do in those situations is we document that the complaint came in, but it's not going to go into this officer's history. He's not going to face a pre-disciplinary hearing. So bring this complaint back to Sergeant Daniels, who gave it to you, and tell him what you found. An hour later, I saw that same investigator. I said, so what did he say to you? He said, investigate him anyway. I said, excuse me? He said, investigate him anyway. Did he give you a reason? No, he didn't give me a reason. That was one of the final straws. I can't tell you that it was the final straw, but that sticks out in my brain. So here's an example. When he points to these numbers and says, look, white and black, it's real even. Look at all these officers here. See this officer here? I didn't even sustain a complaint. Yeah, but you never should have investigated him. Okay. So you drug him through a process. You put him through a pre-disciplinary hearing. It's now on his history, and you knew from the start he hadn't violated a policy. I have a problem with that.
But just to be clear, that officer was validated, not like they found nothing there, right?
Right.
Okay, just want to make sure that wasn't worse than what you were describing.
No, but they drug him through the process, and if you go pull this officer's history now, it's there as a ding on his history, as if he did something wrong, but it was just, you just didn't sustain it. It was unfair.
Let's get around to and John Dauthier, former Baton Rouge Police Sergeant, is our guest. Let's get around to the stuff about allegedly following Chief Paul or having people follow Chief Paul. How did your name get dragged into that?
So let me qualify what I'm about to tell you. I'm not here to attack Chief Paul. Okay, I'm here because he has been attacking me, and not only him, but his surrogates. So the best way I know how to explain it is to give you a very quick hypothetical and ask you a question about it. Imagine that I'm a supervisor at the Baton Rouge Police Department, and one of the officers who works for me comes to me and says, hey, I want to tell you about a situation that I had last night. I was working extra duty at a bar. I was in the parking lot, and one of my best friends walks out of the bar, stumbles, nearly falls, clearly is intoxicated, turns and looks at me and realizes, oh, man, that's my friend. He walks up to me. We speak for a minute. He gets in his car, and he drives away. You know, I knew I should have done something. I wanted to do something, but he was my friend. What should I have done? I just didn't know what to do. And I say to that officer, if you're ever in that situation again, because that's a tough situation, you can call me. I'll help you make that arrest. Do you have a problem with that advice I just gave that officer?
No.
Now, replace the friend with Chief Paul, because that's exactly what happened.
This is where the ball gets rolling, basically. Where did it go from there?
Well, prior to me finding out that there was actually a criminal investigation launched into me because of this conversation, that incident had happened a year and a half prior to me finding that out.
Wait, pause for just a second.
Sure.
Because we talked about you being investigated a minute ago, and you said there's no investigation. But you were investigated, though.
Oh, I was investigated a number of times after I left Internal Affairs.
Okay, gotcha. Just I had the timeline off. Just wanted to make sure everyone was clear on where we're at. So continue.
So when I learned about the investigation, this criminal investigation into this conversation that I had with this lawyer, I learned it last September with the rest of the world when they held a press conference. And at that moment in time, last September, this conversation that I'd had with that officer had happened at least, a year and a half earlier. I think that was your question. What was the timeline on this?
Yeah.
So the narrative now has become that there was a conspiracy, and this was announced at the press conference, right, last September, and has been repeated recently by Chief Paul at the Metro Council meeting a few Wednesdays ago. I believe Councilman Darrell Hurst on your radio, although they haven't named me by
No,
name.
your name has not come up on this show, and I don't think it came up
Previously.
at that council meeting, but previously, prior.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's already been announced who he's talking about, and everyone knows who he's talking about.
Everyone within the department.
Everyone who listened to that press conference last September is
Right.
well aware.
Right. It continues on if you say the name first and then just.
That's correct.
Okay.
And somehow it has morphed into that there was a standing order that I had given. If you see the chief somewhere at some bar, call me, I'm coming.
Mm-hmm.
Nonsense. That's nonsense for a lot of reasons, the least of which is I live at the very northern end of this parish. If I was sitting in my car,
Yeah.
my police unit, dressed and ready for that phone call, can't wait, okay? Hey, he's leaving Churchill's now, which is where this incident happened, by the way.
Okay.
I'm 45 minutes away.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make any sense that I would make that
No.
stand? No, it's
No.
illogical, and it's being repeated. And I guess so. If you were that, if that situation happened, and he knows it happened, and he needs to change the narrative, well, now he's turned the narrative. Now it was a conspiracy to catch him drinking and driving. I got a great idea. If you were drinking and driving, how about no?
There's that. John Dauthier is our guest. He's a former sergeant with BRPD. John, I want to use these last 2.5 minutes or so just to kind of ask what it is you're seeking. Because as far as I know, you just want to tell your side of the story. You just want to get your name out of it and clarify things. But is there something you're looking for from the department?
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Okay.
I have a pending civil service appeal from one of the ones that they sustained against me. I won one of them already, and we're waiting on a ruling from the second one, but that's not something from the department. That's from the 19th JDC.
Let me re-ask the question. Are there plans to, I guess escalate's probably the wrong word here, but make this bigger and continue into the future?
Lord, no. I had a golden opportunity to file a defamation lawsuit back last September.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I know about lawsuits is they never end the way you want. They always last longer than you expect them to, and you never get the resolution that you want. So, no, I've decided, at least at this point, not to pursue anything like that. My goal to come here was to say, stop with the nonsense that there was a conspiracy to catch you doing something wrong.
Fair enough.
That's not true.
Okay, fair enough. He is John Dauthier. I wanted to get into so many more things. This was way too fast of a segment. John, I greatly appreciate you coming on this morning.
It's been my pleasure.
Absolutely. It's 7:30 at Talk 107.3 FM. We're going to break for ABC News.